Oh, all right. There we go. Catch some fish. I love this boat. I love fishing. You get to catch all kinds of fish. There we go. Some of you think if you are close to the Son of God, if you ate with him, if you sat in a boat with him, if you slept under the same roof with him, you would believe. I see all of you have a belief strategy. You believe in someone, you believe in something, and belief is one of the most confusing and most abused and most misused concept. You think that you would believe, if you sat with Jesus in the boat, you would believe. You'd be saying, okay, I believe, sign me up. But I saw him, I ate with him, I touched him, I slept under the same roof, we basked in the sun on the hills of Galilee, we enjoy the Sea of Galilee waters, but I still didn't believe. I didn't believe. My name is, if you're wondering who my name is Simon. The name Simon means somebody who is shifty, very shaky, very unstable. That was my name. I grew up in Bethesda. Bethesda was a village, actually, in Judea, in Jerusalem. And I grew up there. I'm the son of John, the son of Jonah. I had a brother who was my fishing buddy. His name was Andrew. We grew up in Bethesda, and then we decided that we would relocate to Capernaum. Capernaum was a place where we thought that we would make a living. It was a major port, a city. So we relocated. I opened up a fishing business. And the reason why we relocated was I got fed up with the system. The entire religious or the entire faith system was so corrupt. See, the religious leader, you know what they did? They burdened with people with rules and regulations and rituals and routines. I couldn't live with it. I was just so fed up, so I just gave up on God. I grew up Jewish. We celebrated the Passover when God delivered the children of Israel out of Egypt. The faith system, I just stopped believing in that. On the other hand, there were the Romans. They were so corrupt. You know what they did? They actually crucified people, crucified rebels. They crucified them on the public highway. So we were tormented, we were ridiculed, we were humiliated by the Romans because they actually occupied my homeland. So I gave up on the faith system, I gave up on the Romans, I also gave up on the Jewish tradition. So I decided that what I was going to do is I was just going to go fishing. I saw in Jerusalem a brand of religiosity that I had a hard time believing. So I couldn't just believe. I couldn't just keep pretending and go to church and act like as if I believed in God when I didn't really believe. So I went fishing. I decided I would be a fisherman. But then one day, I was fishing. My brother Andrew came to me. Andrew followed John the Baptist. See, Andrew didn't give up on the faith system. He always believed. He wanted to see the Messiah. So he decided he was going to look for the Messiah, and John the Baptist came on the scene, and John the Baptist said, hey, look, there's somebody who is coming who's going to be a witness, somebody who's going to be from God, somebody who's going to represent God. It's not me, but it's going to be him. He's called the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. So for some reason, Andrew ran into him, and he came to me and said, look, we have found the Messiah. So he introduced me to the Messiah. He introduced me to Jesus. And then Jesus came one time. We were just sitting there. Jesus came to us, and he found my boat, and he said, I want to take your boat fishing. But before we do that, I want to preach a sermon, and there were crowds there. And so Jesus said, hey, why don't you push out the boat so I can sit in it? Because the boat, when it's out in the ocean or out in the sea, it can amplify the sound. So Jesus sat in the boat and started teaching. As Jesus started teaching, people were amazed. People were moved. People have said, oh, he's not like the religious teachers we know. I was caught off guard. I was like, could he be the Messiah? No, but Andrew had already told me that he grew up in Nazareth. He was the son of a carpenter. How can the son of a carpenter be a Messiah? That's impossible. But then after the sermon, Jesus said, hey, look, Peter, let's just go fishing. I want to take you fishing. Now, if Jesus asks a fisherman, let's go fishing, you always have questions. Fishing? You're a carpenter. I'm a fisherman. Let me tell you a little bit about fishing. We've been up all night. We went fishing and we caught nothing, zero. You mean we need to go fishing? And Jesus said, yeah, why don't you just trust me? Just take out and throw out in the deep. Well, I said, okay, I'll just go fishing. We went out and I threw my nets over, and you're not going to believe what happened. My nets were filled with fish. Just suddenly, just instantly. It just happened like, I still remember it. That's why I love fishing. You can see the results. I'm a very practical guy. You do something with your hands, you see the results of that. And I saw a lot of fish that I'd never seen in my entire life. I looked at Jesus, I said, Jesus, get away from me. I'm a man who's sinful. I'm a fraud. I have a lot of failures. I don't want you to be with me. Just get away from me. And Jesus turned to me and he cheered and he said, Simon, come follow me. If you believe in me, I'll make you a fisher of people. And so from there, I was the first to believe, but I was also the first to bail. You're not going to believe this. Because when I started following Jesus, I became a skeptic. I was very cynical. I questioned everything. I had a lot of questions. I was the wisest guy you can ever imagine. And I always spoke my mind. I was bold. I was decisive. I was courageous. I could do whatever I wanted to do. If I wanted to give you a piece of my mind, I could tell you, I'm Peter, by the way. I'm Simon. I'm a fisherman. So I questioned everything. One time, Jesus was teaching in parables and things we didn't really understand. I asked him, Jesus, why don't you explain the parable? Another occasion, the disciples could not cast out the demons. We asked him, why is it that the disciples could not cast out demons? Another occasion, I asked Jesus, okay, we've left our boats, we've left our nets, we've left our wives, we've left our houses, we've left our homes, we've left our relatives to follow you. What's in it for us, Jesus? What's in it for us? Another time, I asked Jesus, hey, look, Jesus, can you just help me understand what you're talking about? Because I'm totally clueless. And Jesus was patient with us. And Jesus would slow down. Jesus would explain the parables. Jesus would explain the rewards we would get. As you can imagine, and also Jesus, in his form of teaching, he would speak in extremes. He would set God's standard so high. He would say, hey, look, if your hand causes you to sin, why don't you cut it off? If your eye causes you to sin, why don't you gouge those eyes out? So it's better for you to go in heaven with one eye or one arm than to go to hell with both hands. He would speak in extremes, and times we would be like, then who then can be saved? What struck me is that from the very beginning, all kinds of people were drawn to him. Satisfied people, admired people, wealthy people, lepers, blind people, they followed him. And you know what was very fascinating? What struck me is that he had a way of tapping into their hearts that where they caved in and they were all reborn. That was the kind of person we had, and that was Jesus. He drew a lot of people. All kinds of people were drawn to him, and men and women were reborn. Jesus changed my name from Simon to Cephas. Simon means shifty, shaky, unstable, unreliable. To Cephas, to Peter, a rock, solid. And Jesus had this tendency to call me Simon every time I fell short of what he believed about me. And when I believed what he imagined I could be or should be or must be, he called me Peter, Rocky. He was like, yeah, that's my boy. That's Peter, the rock, the solid rock. In fact, we traveled one time to Caesarea Philippi, and we were there. This was a 2-day journey, about 60, 70 miles. It took us a long time, and when we got there, Jesus turned to both of us and asked a question that you should be able to know the answer to this. He turned to us, he said, hey, look, I know there are several opinions that have circulated around about me, but I want to know, who do the people say that I am? Who do the crowd say that I am? Some say, you're John the Baptist. Others say, you are Jeremiah. Others say, you are Elijah. Some really believe you are John the Baptist who got beheaded, but now he's back to life. And then Jesus actually turned to the crowd, turned to the disciples and asked and say, hey, what about you? What about you? What about you, Andrew? What about you, Bartholomew? What about you, Matthew? Who do you say that I am? What about you, James? What about you, John? What about Judas? Do you know who I am? And as you can imagine, since I was the spokesman for the group, I spoke up. I said, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus said something that really stunned me. He said, Peter, you are the rock. This statement which you've made, is the rock, the solid rock on which I'll build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. He called me Peter, rocky, strong, solid, stable. You can tell I felt really good. Another occasion, I dared Jesus. I said, Jesus, we were out in the open space of the Sea of Galilee, and we were just going by at night, and then we saw somebody come walk on water, and we asked, everybody wondered, we were in the boat. We're like, okay, who is that? Is that a ghost? Is that a person? What is that? Well, I said, okay, if it's you, Lord, let me get out of the boat and come and walk to you. And I got out of the boat. Do you know what's funny? All the other 11 disciples stayed in the boat. I was the only one who believed and got to walk on water. Well, everybody else doubted. But as soon as I started feeling a sense of confidence, I started shaking. I started looking at the winds and the waves. I wondered. I was like, okay, I'm going to sink. And then I reached out and said, Lord, save me. And Jesus there, he rebuked me. He said, oh, Peter, why didn't you believe? Why did you doubt? Every major event in his life, we were the closest. When he raised Lazarus, we were there. When he raised a little girl who was 12 years old, we were there. Because Jesus wanted us to be close, to be in on the action of what he was doing. When Jesus healed the blind man, Bartimaeus, we were there. When Jesus healed the woman with the issue of blood, we were there. We were so close. Every major event in his life, we were close. You would think that we would believe because we were there. Not so fast. Sometimes we understood him. Sometimes we heard him. We're like, okay, we get it. We understand him. We know him. Except when Jesus talked about death. You know, once in a while, Jesus would start talking about death. He would say something like, the Son of Man is going to suffer many things. The Son of Man is going to be killed. The Son of Man is going to be buried. And the Son of Man is going to rise again from the dead. That's something we never really got. We were with him. We're so close, so intimate. We understood him, but we never understood that. So Jesus, to make sure we got it, this time he decided to take us up to the top of the mountain, the Transfiguration. And we took us there, the top of the mountain. We were there, and all of a sudden we saw Elijah. We saw Moses, both of them talking with him about this suffering, about this resurrection. Now, I'm the spokesman of the group. I'm Simon. I'm Simon Peter. Or when he came down to the ground where we were, you know what I said? I turned to him. I said, hey, why don't we build little tents here? One house for you, one house for Elijah, one house for Moses. Let's just hang out here. I like this place. I love this place. See, we never really got to understand who Jesus was. Even when it came to his death, we never understood him. Do you know him? I was with him in the boat. I ate with him. I slept under the same roof. I saw him perform miracles. There's one time when Jesus fed 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread, 2 pieces of fish. We were very close. We touched him. We smelled the same. Things. We ate from the same plate. We were there. We maintained the closest friendship. And within our group, actually, there was a set of brothers. Andrew and me, we were fishermen. There was James and John, who were also fishermen, the sons of Zebedee. There was Bartholomew, there was a tax collector. There was Simon, a zealot. He wanted us to be close, and Jesus wanted us to get to know him. He wanted us to understand him. You know what was interesting? Within the group, not everybody got it. I'm sure within here, this group here, not everybody gets who Jesus is. Nathanael was one of the disciples. He believed right away. Thomas questioned everything. John said very little. I always spoke my mind. I always spoke up. When something bugged me, when something nugged me, I spoke my mind. And that was the group. That's where we were. And we tried to get to know him. And you know what was interesting is that Jesus had a strange way of getting the 3 of us, Peter, James, and me, James and John. He had a strange way of getting us so close because he wanted us to be in on his activity. He wanted us to trust him. Do you trust him? Do you really know him? Do you have a relationship with him? I was there. But I abandoned him at a time when he needed me the most. We had the most intimate relationship. One time he would commend me, another time he would rebuke me. One time I would be okay, another time I would feel so bad. One time I would be, yes, Jesus. There was one time when Jesus started talking about death. You know when he was talking about death? I pulled Jesus on the side. I say, Jesus, stop talking like that. Messiahs don't die. Don't talk like that. We want a king. You're going to rescue us from the Romans. You're going to rescue us from the pagans. You're going to rescue us from Caesar. Don't talk like that. And you know what Jesus did? Jesus said, Simon, Satan has asked for you. He wants to test you. But you know what, Peter? I've prayed for you so that when your faith is strong, when you stand, you'll be able to strengthen your brothers and your sisters. You know what was interesting? One time, Jesus paid special attention to me. I had a special relationship. I actually held them. I occupied the most trusted position within the group of the 12. I maintained the closest relationship with who Jesus was. There was one time, people from the temple came to us and they said, well, you know what? Does your teacher pay taxes? The temple tax. Now, if Jesus claimed to be the Son of God, you would pretty much say, I'm not sure he pays the taxes. And so I said, of course he pays taxes. I had the same question. I was like, okay, if he's the Son of God, how is it possible that he's able to pay taxes? So he heard me. He could read our thoughts. He heard me. He called me in and he said, do you think we should pay taxes, Peter? I said, well, if you're son, then you shouldn't pay taxes. It's slaves and strangers who should pay taxes. But Jesus turned to me and said, look, Peter, we don't want to be an offense to people in the temple. Why don't you go down the lake and you find a fish, and within that fish you find a coin and bring it back and pay my taxes and your taxes. He paid for my taxes. I heard a rumor that you guys are about to pay taxes. It's just around the corner. So I occupied the most trusted position. But you know what happened? I was the first to abandon him. I was the first to say, I'm not so sure about this. I'm not so sure whether I'm going to follow you. But then, one time, this was big. It was the Passover. Jesus dropped a bombshell. In a Jewish Passover, what you have to do is you have to rent a room if you don't have a room. You have to get the bread. You have to get the wine, and then you sort of gather together. So Jesus asked some of us to go get the bread and the wine. We got the bread and the wine. He gathered us in a room. While we were there, it was expected that somebody had to wash the feet for the guests. But this time, we, the disciples, we never paid attention to that. We just kept looking around. If somebody never prepared to wash the feet, somebody else has to do it. So Jesus got up. This was the Passover. He put a garb around him. He started washing our feet. We call him rabbi. We call him teacher. I mean, we're supposed to be washing his feet. You know, James and John are trying to get up on top of the ladder. Who will sit on the left, who will sit on the right. And here's Jesus washing our feet. And there we were. After washing the feet, he took the bread. He broke it. He gave it to us. He said, "This is my body broken for you." And then he said, "This is the cup of the covenant." He took the wine. It's the blood of the covenant given for you. And we wondered about this. You know what really nagged me? I kept asking myself, who is it is going to betray Jesus? Who is going to betray a man we've walked with, a man who we left all our houses and our homes and our wives? Who's going to betray Jesus? So I asked him. I spoke up again. I spoke my mind. I said, "Jesus, I'm not going to deny you. Now, all the other guys will, but I will not." Jesus turned to me and said, "Oh yeah, Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times. Peter said, no, the other guys actually will deny you. I still believe. I'm going to die with you. If I have to go to prison with you, I will go to prison." And it's as if Jesus knew our hearts. It's as if Jesus wanted to let us know what was up to, that he was aware of what was happening. "I'll never deny you." Jesus said, "You know what? I'm going to make it very specific. Before the rooster crows 3 times, you will deny me. You will deny that you have been with me publicly." As you can imagine, I denied Jesus with all my protests, with all my resolutions, with all my promises that I'm going to stand with you, Jesus. I'm going with you. I'm going to die with you. I'm going to stick with you. I denied Jesus. It didn't work. I was the first to believe, first to bail. I was the first to trust, or first to abandon him. But then it happened. We had a public trial. Just like he had predicted, we had a crisis of belief. Have you ever had a crisis of belief? I had many crises of belief. We're in the Garden of Gethsemane. A mob stormed the Garden of Gethsemane. Can you imagine what it was like? Men with clubs, men with swords, they flooded the Garden of Gethsemane. But before that, we spent some time praying. Jesus went off a distance to pray. You know what I did? I fell asleep. First crisis of belief. At the time when he needed me the most, at a time when he needed me, I slept. And there we were. And there was this man by the name of Malchus. He was the servant of the high priest. I was like, I got my sword here. We're in the Garden of Gethsemane. Okay, what do I do? What do I do? Where do I start? I can't fight the Romans. All the other disciples actually left. They ran for dead. I pulled out a sword. I cut the man's ear off. Jesus said, "Put away the sword. Those who use the sword will die by the sword." And Jesus did something that was so unbelievable. He took Malchus' ear and he reattached it, put it back right in place. I was like, okay, here are men and women who want to arrest you and kill you and torment you and persecute you, and you're doing something good. From that moment, I just gave up. I just gave up. I ran away. I abandoned him. I left town. In fact, what happened was Judas came and kissed him. I just couldn't believe that one of the guys who was one of the 12, who was one of us, went and betrayed Jesus. We all ran away. We left him. We had a crisis of belief. And there was a public trial. You know why there was a public trial? Jesus was brought before the chief priest. They charged him for 2 things: blasphemy and for claiming that he would tear the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. They misunderstood him. And they took him to Pilate, who was the governor at the time. And when Pilate asked actually Jesus a few words, he said, "Jesus, who are you? Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus said, "You say so."